The Pope has broken with centuries of tradition and live-streamed his Easter Sunday Mass for the first time as the world's 1.3 billion Catholics celebrate the holiday under coronavirus lockdown. He spoke to a small audience in St Peter's Basilica instead of the hundreds of thousands who normally gather in the square. Pope Francis devoted his traditional Urbi et Orbi message to what he called this year's Easter of solitude and called for global solidarity. Let's take a listen.
In the light of the present circumstances, may international sanctions be relaxed, since these make it difficult for countries on which they've been imposed to provide adequate support to their citizens. And may all nations be put in a position to meet the greatest needs of the moment through the reduction, if not the forgiveness, of the debt burdening the balance sheets of the poorest nations.
Well, let's cross now to Martin Gack, DW's Religious Affairs correspondent. Martin, what issues did the Pope touch on in his address?
The address was remarkably broad. I mean, he dealt with anything from Venezuela, terrorism in Africa, weapons, commerce, the coronavirus. I mean, essentially, the overall idea is that we are actually faced with a categorical demand of solidarity and care for each other. And things like the embargo, which he mentioned as well, against Iran and against Cuba by the US, are things that actually stand directly against the idea of solidarity and, in the eyes of the Church, mercy. So he called essentially for a stop and a demand to return to, an interest or to privileging the care for each other.
Martin, the Church still has a lot of authority and is a big presence in the lives of Catholics around the world. How has it used its sway to help stem the coronavirus outbreak?
I mean, the Church, from the Vatican to different parishes, has been essentially in line with the political demands or the policy demands being made of quarantining, distancing, etc. So this is a reason why we see on Easter Sunday we see churches empty. At the very same time, the fact is that the Church has actually undergone a bit of a revolution, or is actually undergoing it directly in front of our eyes. What we're seeing and what was said in this report, Cuellar, this priest, is pointing out to something that is really remarkably interesting, which is that the fact that people cannot go to the church now effectively means that the Church is using digital technology to go to the people. The very idea of the Church is bringing the community together. And at a time of great crisis, particularly at a time in which people are losing their lives in complete isolation, in hospitals or in their houses locked up, the Church is actually the very core of the Church mission, which is this idea of bringing comfort, is something that digital technology permits. It is worth pointing out that in many cases, and this was pointed out by the Pope during the homily, priests are actually losing their lives by going directly next to somebody who is infected and is dying, giving last rites and holding their hands, and then becoming themselves ill and dying. So obviously the role of the Church becomes much more important, much more visible, and I think that this is something that has to be underscored.
Martin Gack, DW's Religious Affairs correspondent, many thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, it's not just the Pope for whom the coronavirus has forced a dramatic rethink of Easter celebrations, but for Christians of all denominations. So let's take a look at how they're marking their holy day.
Lord Jesus, we love you today.
This Texas church holds more than 16,000 worshippers. This Easter, however, it's only Joel Listine and a few of his team. But the preacher won't let that get in his way.
I think that you're bigger than a virus and bigger than fear, bigger than anything that's trying to stop us. I think that today, Lord, is a victory day.
Special times call for special measures. Even the choir at Lakewood Church is working from home today. With most of the United States on lockdown, Listine had to turn this year's Easter service into a virtual one. So did these priests in the Philippines. Despite the safety measures, they managed to fill every last spot of their church. Not with actual people, but more than 1,000 pictures of families who hope this will help their prayers to be heard. Staying home is the directive that is also being strictly observed in the heart of Jerusalem's Old City. Only a handful of priests attended Mass at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the place where Christians believe Jesus was crucified and resurrected. In the South Korean capital Seoul, which is not under a lockdown, worshippers could attend Easter Mass in person, while maintaining a safe distance. For congregations across the globe, the coronavirus epidemic has added a major challenge to Easter celebrations. Here in the French city of Lyon, only those living at the church site were able to attend the Easter Vigil. But despite all the challenges, this Colombian priest believes the situation also has a positive side. Because of coronavirus, Mauricio Cuellar just recently began connecting online with parishioners at home. Although it seems difficult, I think it's a renewal of the church, not only for us priests, but for the families themselves who have met again in this holy time. While this Easter, pews in many churches around the world will remain empty, preachers like Mauricio Cuellar will continue to spread their messages, one stream at a time.
Now let's get you caught up on the latest developments on the coronavirus now. And the US has overtaken Italy as the country with the highest confirmed number of fatalities. The death toll in the US has now topped 20,000. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has extended a nationwide lockdown quarantine for another 30 days. South Korea reported 32 additional cases in the last day, continuing a downward trend in infections there. And Russia, meanwhile, has more than 2,000 new cases, its biggest daily increase since the outbreak began.